Hey YouTube, what's going on? So, episode 1 of the mod building series with yours truly, Adam Miller. Now, I'll tell you this. A lot of you may be thinking, I expect to see soldering irons and a work table. That's why I said in our introduction, we're going to start off with some fundamentals. So what I want to accomplish in this video is us all getting our minds around a couple of different styles of mods. Now, as I explain these, I'm primarily going to focus on box mod style mods, but this could also apply to other forms, right? Especially when we talk about full mechanical mods, which could also be tubes or whichever else. But I want everyone that's watching to have a good fundamental understanding of where I'm coming from, so later on when we talk about things or we talk about different styles of mods, you'll know what I'm talking about. Now, not necessarily that this is the legal industry verbiage, but that you know what I'm talking about as we progress through this series. And I think that's what's important, right? That we're all on the same page, not that we're exactly right by everyone's definition. So as I talk through this, we're going to primarily talk about 4 different kinds of mods. The first one we're going to discuss is going to be a full mechanical mod. The second one will be a semi-mechanical mod. The third will be a semi-mechanical protected mod. And the fourth will be regulated mods. Now, I'll get into the regulated mods a little bit more as the series goes on. We're only going to talk about them just in an overview here because there's so many different types of regulated mods, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But first, let's talk about mechanical mods. Pure mechanical mods. And what I'm talking about right now is a mod that uses any configurations of batteries. And in general, you're going to see probably 3 right off the top of my head. A single battery mod, which would be something like a tube mod or a small box mod, something like Michael Natividad makes a small box mod, mechanical box mod. It's 118-650. It's the I think it calls the Revo Mini. Any of your tube mods are solid mechanical mods, right? You could also have a series or parallel box, okay? And as we go on with the series, and a series of these videos, that is, not a series box mod, we'll talk more about the difference between parallel and series box mods. In fact, in episode 2, we're going to really delve into that because we're going to start really taking a look at designing and building our own series and or parallel mod. So, as far as the full mechanical mod goes, what I'm referring to when I say full mechanical, I mean it has no electronic switches or wires whatsoever. So something like a tube mod, something like the original Revo 3000 box mod, a MCV copper cherry bomber, aluminum cherry bomber, either one you want to refer to. And there's a lot more out there you can name, right? But something that has no wiring in it. The contact, the firing button is actually physical. It would usually be something like a copper to copper hard connection, or something like a flat bar made into a spring. A lot like you'll see in a lot of squonk boxes now. There's a lot of squonk boxes out there that are actually full mechanical boxes. That would be a good example. Now, later on in the series, we may get into building some full mechanical boxes. Let me tell you something about full mechanical boxes. A lot of times they're really bulletproof, right? They're built well. To build a nice fully mechanical box, you need to have some level at least rudimentary machining skills, okay? Because you're actually going to fabricate every little part and piece to work together. Now, that's not necessarily always true. We could build something with maybe a copper spring bar and a more, let's call it archaic switch in it. But I think for the purpose of this series, we probably won't get into anything like that. If we do a mechanical mod, we'll do some things that maybe we could do with a hand file or a bench grinder, but we'll get into all that later. So that's what I call a full mechanical mod. Now let's talk about the next class. The next class I would refer to would be a semi-mechanical mod, okay? And back 4 to 5 years ago, semi-mechanical mods were probably, as far as in my world, what I knew about, that was probably the biggest percentage that you saw people, as far as do-it-yourself mod builders, were making semi-mechanical boxes. So let me tell you what I would refer to as a semi-mechanical mod. A semi-mechanical mod will use electronic switches and some wiring in that mod. However, they won't be protected. So what I would typically expect to see as something I would refer to as a semi-mechanical mod would be perhaps a box, a battery sled, and a high amp rated switch. Okay, something like maybe an ignition starter switch out of a car that was good for, let's say, in excess of 30 amps, right? So you actually have battery power going through an electronic switch and then providing power to your 510 connection. And those are pretty simple. I think everybody can get their head around those. Semi-mechanical mod has a switch, has a couple wires, but it doesn't have any protection. The next class of mods, and more than likely what we will probably start on when we get into episode 2 and really start going to the table and building some things, will be semi-mechanical protected mods. And this could be a series of setups. The most common that you'll find, and what I would expect to see if I ask somebody to show me a semi-mechanical protected mod, would be a mod with a battery sled that is, the power from the batteries are transferred to the 510 through a MOSFET. Okay, MOSFET works a lot like a relay. It's electronic, but if you're familiar with a relay in a car or a truck, that might be something easier to break it down for you, is that the switch, the electronic switch in this semi-mechanical protected mod will never see the full battery amperage. Okay, the switch will simply act as a mechanism to trip the MOSFET, or the relay in this analogy. The relay, or the MOSFET, the actual MOSFET, and compare it to a relay, is actually what transfers power, or the way that we're probably going to work it, will transfer ground to your 510 connection. So it's basically using the switch as an indirect switch. It actually uses the switch to fire the MOSFET, much like a relay we just talked about, to actually provide power to the 510. Now, why would we do this, and why would I call it protected? These are reasons. With a MOSFET, it's only going to handle so much amp load. Okay, if you were to dead short outside on the downstream side of the MOSFET, it would actually blow the MOSFET before your battery is vented, and that adds some level of protection. Also, what it does for us, it allows us to run a multitude of switches. If you think about something, I'm sure you're familiar with Mytecs. They're pretty popular. We used them in our mods quite a while. The Mytec 1201 in particular, a stainless 12mm Mytec switch. That switch is rated for 16 volts, but it's only rated, I don't remember how many amps, but very, very low amp rating. Okay, if you put that switch in a mod straight to the batteries to the 510, you press the button one time, even with the what we would call high resistance build, it will fry that switch immediately. Those are not built to handle any kind of amp load. However, when you're using that switch to trip a MOSFET as a power or ground to that MOSFET, it hardly sees any amperage at all. Now, it sees the voltage from the batteries, which is not a big deal. Voltage is great. Amperage is what hurts. Amperage is what causes heat. So when we use a MOSFET, I don't use PFETs a whole lot. They can be used in circuitry. I'm not super familiar with them, so we're going to concentrate on MOSFETs in this one. Anyway, having said all that, using that MOSFET opens up the world to us to be able to use different kind of switches, and it also, like I said, affords us some level of protection. Now, as a secondary safety switch, or as a secondary safety feature, we could also add in fuses, okay? And we'll talk about that as we get into parallel versus series configurations of batteries. A lot of people will assume that a series box, because the batteries are in series, it makes more voltage, 8 volts as compared to 4, roughly thereabouts, to a parallel, is that the series is more, let's call it dangerous, okay? from a building standpoint, and we'll go through this a lot in episode 2, the series box is actually a little more forgiving because of the way the sled is wired up. Okay, in a parallel configuration, both sides of the sled are actually mated together. So you got two positives mated together and two negatives mated together. And if you ever put those batteries in upside down the wrong way, you're going to bend your batteries immediately. Take it from somebody who knows this for a fact. It's also really easy to do in a full mechanical mod, okay? In the series configuration, it's very difficult to just put your batteries in and vent something because you've always got two poles that are disconnected. And like I said, we'll go over this a lot in episode 2, and I'll lay that out on the table and show you, but it's worth thinking about. So in a parallel configuration, in a semi-mechanical, protected, parallel configuration, if you really want to be safe about things, we still need to add 1 or 2 fuses into our equation to make sure if we ever put our batteries polarity reversed from each other inside, that we don't vent our batteries immediately. And there's a lot of ways to do this. So don't be thinking this is going to get into a lot, because we could literally do that just by going to the parts store and getting a maxi fuse holder and putting in a 20 or 30 amp fuse, whatever we feel like using it, we can change out later. So we can add in these safety features, make them look nice in the box, and we can do it with parts that we can literally get from our local parts store. And we're going to do that. We're going to go to a parts store to buy some stuff, and we're going to build a box with it later. So anyway, that is what I would call semi-mechanical protected mods. Okay, and that's what we're going to focus on early on in this series, this mod building series, especially in episode 2 that'll be coming up probably next week sometime. It's going to take me a few different days to shoot it, but that's the first thing we're going to work on. So the 4th category of mods I want to talk to you about, and it's something that I feel like probably a lot of people are going to want to get into, are regulated mods. And that's something like what I have in my hand, something with, say, a DNA board. And when I talk about regulated mods, I'm throwing a very broad and general term out there because there's so many styles of regulation we can talk about, whether that be PWM boards, DC to DC converters, something like GE Raptor chip or OKL chip, you know, something that's all-inclusive like a DNA or a Yeehee board, especially some of the newer Yeehee boards have onboard charging. So you've got some boards out there that, as a single board, facilitate charging, wattage, temperature controls, all kind of things, a display. And you've got some things that let's call them more archaic in our industry, but still work great. I'll give credit to Mamu. Y'all may know who I'm talking about, but early on in this industry, that was an engineer person, I don't really even know, very secretive person, but Mamu came up with a lot of the original sketches that a lot of us used to wire up Raptors, OKLs, those kind of chips. Now, the Raptor or OKL or anything like that, even a Delta chip, is not all inclusive, right? You can't charge through that board. You need some indirect functions such as a pop meter to control that chip. And this is the thing about, that's why you don't see a whole lot of Raptors and stuff out there on the market today, I believe, is because, believe it or not, it's a lot easier to wire up a DNA board than it is to wire up a GE Raptor chip, like let's say a 20 amp, which is supposedly good for 120 watts. Now, we can talk about that later when we get into that, about what it's really good for, but 20 amps is what this board is good for. But there's a lot of wiring involved in wiring up that simple little setup. So, like I say, we could just talk ad nauseum about the amount of regulated mods that are out there. Eventually in the series, we will get to where we build some regulated mods. We'll get to where we work with some LiPo batteries. But up front, what I really want to concentrate on right now, going forward for the next probably couple of episodes, are working with semi-mechanical protected box mods for a couple of reasons. One, the safety features that are built in, right? I want, if you're starting off just building right now, I want you to start off with something that you're not going to fucking blow your box up the first time you use it because you made a simple wiring mistake. Also, it's just fundamentally, I want you to understand how to manage your wires, how to place things in your box well, and building something like this can really facilitate that. And we'll do a couple different designs and stuff. But this is what really you know, a lot of people, when you think about somebody building a mod, or, you know, if you envision somebody building a mod, you think about working on that mod, and you think that's what that entails. And that is the value-added work process of it, right, when you're actually getting something done. But really, a lot of your time will be involved in just what I'm doing right now. Sitting down and thinking your way through what you want to build, how you want to build it, and how to get to that end goal, the product that you want to make for yourself, okay? So the good thing about doing this is, as a do-it-yourself deal, we don't have some concerns that a manufacturer would have, right? So we can do a lot of things. We can get pretty crazy with it, with our own projects, because we don't have to duplicate it again, okay? So we can get really outlandish when we just build one box mod for ourselves. We can do some pretty crazy things, right? And if it's really hard to duplicate, it doesn't really matter, because we're not planning on building 1,000 of them. That's what's great about do-it-yourself. That's what's great about building something that's personal for you, is you don't have all these concerns about how much is it going to cost to replicate this 1,000 times. How do I get all the parts to keep these going? We have none of those concerns. So I think this is going to be really fun for me. I hope it'll be fun for y'all to watch. And as we go forward, so we're going to build these together. I hope I get to see some of y'all's builds as you start making stuff. But until you see episode 2, what I really want you to think about is start thinking in your head, what would I really, you know, what's something that I could do a little bit different? Just think of a standard box mod, maybe, and we'll go over some box sizes so everybody understands that, but a G box, a P box, A box, whichever. What would I really like for me? And it doesn't necessarily have to be anything different than what you've seen on the market, but what would you like to have for yourself? And start putting thought into that, because up front, right now, before we start actually delving down and building something, we can think through things and do these thought experiments on what we want, and we can make a real change right now in our engineering, because that's really what we're doing, engineering and designing in our minds. We can make changes now that really make our life easier down the road. So in closing on this one, I want y'all to really put some thought into what you want to get out of this, what you want to learn from this, and you know, leave some comments below. In the first, or really episode 2, our first build session, what do you want to get out of it? What do you want to see? I'll put those down there, and I'll make sure I'm trying to cover those efficiently for you. But, you know, I really want you to have a basic understanding of where we're going with this first off, and then be able to execute when we get on episode 2. So some things you might want to start looking at. For episode 2, get your work area, okay? Start deciding where you're going to work on these things. No, you're not going to want this in your bedroom. You're not going to want it in your kids' rooms, because we're going to do some soldering. We're going to do some stuff like that. So between episode 1 and 2, I'll give you a homework. Find you a place that you feel comfortable, that you want to work, where your things won't be disturbed, where you're not worried about your kids getting a hot soldering iron, you're not worried about spilling epoxy on the floor. Hell, it could be outside on the porch. It could be, you know, in a washroom in your house. It could be in a garage. It could be anywhere, literally. Just get a place you feel comfortable, get you a bench and get it cleared off, and get ready for that to be your home to learn from for a little while. And I think we're going to have a lot of fun with this. Also, during this series, as we build these mods together, and hopefully we create things together, right? And I'm able to build things here based on recommendations that people who are watching make. Every mod that I make, I'm going to turn around and give that mod away to the viewers, okay? It's going to be pretty easy to do. All you do is watch the video, and sometimes I'm going to ask you, hey, send me a picture of what you're working on. That would be a completed mod. Just, you know, if you're working on your solder joint, send me a picture of you doing that, and we'll set something up where we can share that. And then also, to be involved in any of these giveaways or get any of your pictures put up or displayed on our Facebook page or Instagram, you got to be a member of MSVAA. That's Mississippi Vaping Advocacy Association. If you search MSVAA on Google, it'll pop right up. Become a member. You can be a member of any state. If you're international, I understand. It's cool. You can't be an international member. I got that. Just drop me a note and let me know. But make sure you're a member. If you want to participate in this, you got to be a member of MSVAA. I got to get something out of you, okay? So anyway, look, I've really enjoyed being able to sit here and talk through these different kind of mods and all. Like I say, y'all get ready for episode 2. Make sure you got a place cleared off. Make sure you're ready to get in the zone. Tell you what, speaking of getting in the zone, we may take a trip to AutoZone episode 2 and just pick up some off-the-shelf things we can use to build a simple yet elegant box mod. But till I get back to you on that one, y'all be good. Like I always say, hey, peace out, nomads.